Jaron Jarvis Channel, Top 20 Scary Stories of the Day from Reddit nosleep. 2018-09-30. Story 1, Rule 1, Don't stray from the installation's access roads. I spend a lot of time doing contract work for the army. They contract a hell of a lot of mechanic work out to civilians. Saves on overhead, I guess. But that means I'll often be driving out into obscure training ranges out in the middle of nowhere to unfuck a mission-critical vehicle or piece of equipment that can't be easily brought back into the shop. It could take an hour or more to get out to some of the places these guys, and gals, more and more these days, break their million-dollar toys. Most of the time the job is routine. Spend an hour or more getting to the site. Do an assessment. Fix it if I can, or get an M88 out there if I can't. Head back to the shop. Do the paperwork. Call it a day. At least, that's how it went before they transferred me out to a certain well-known installation in the California desert. Right off the bat I felt like I was being punished. The folks I met in the shop on day one were nice enough on first blush, if a bit coy about the command climate. But they chided me for not knowing any of the rumors about the base and proceeded to tell me a menagerie of what amounted to ghost stories. They were just messing with the new guy, I thought. One guy, Mikey, even put on an Oscar-winning performance as he took me aside and tried to tell me about a bunch of unwritten rules and things to watch out for building upon what the other tall tales the folks in the shop were weaving. Then in ominous tones he told me about the previous mechanic whose spot I was filling. Yay, he went missing when responding to a false call. No one else heard it over the radio, but he recorded it and went out. He should have known better. The unit reporting the call doesn't exist, and the training range was vacant. We have no idea why he went out there. He looked down sadly. We only know that we found his truck buried in a sand berm about 3 days later. No sign of him, or how his vehicle could have wound up buried like that. Just be careful. Things get weird out there. I rolled my eyes and shrugged it off. Talk about commitment to a prank. A few days later I was still settling in and went out on my first two-job call. It was well past 100 degrees out, and both training areas I had to hit were at the extreme eastern edge of the base. As luck would have it, my utility vehicle didn't have working air conditioning either. Thankfully the first job was an easy, if time-consuming, fix. After packing up and getting ready to head to the second site I was required to report my time, position, and estimated arrival at the next site. I thought to myself, I could take the main roads the long way around all the ranges, following procedure, and in doing so avoid entering an active training area, or I could take a shortcut across a training area and cut 40 minutes off my transit time to the next job. Since I knew the training area between me and my next call had actually been vacated that morning and the heat was brutal, I decided to take a shortcut. I drove for what felt like hours in the intense heat. Under those conditions they often say your eyes start playing tricks on you, and they aren't wrong. Strange distorted forms appeared off in the distance only to fade to nothing as I drive by. For miles and miles this went on, then all of a sudden I was brought out of my trance by a form that didn't dissipate. Breaking one of Mikey's silly cardinal rules, I pulled off the road to have a look and see if I could help. As I neared I could see clearly that it was an old Jeep stuck in the sand. It seemed like the kind of Jeep that probably hadn't been used by line units since the early 80s at the latest. What the hell was it doing out here? I slowed down and pulled up next to the wreck, and I immediately felt my stomach drop as if I were weightless. Two limp forms rested in the front seats of the Jeep and one laid nearby in the sand. My adrenaline spiked and I jumped out of my truck rushing over to help. Despite the oppressive heat, a chill overcame me. The men were clearly dead, but they couldn't have been out here more than a week by their appearances. Bloated tongues bulging out of slack jaws, eyes half closed and milky white, skin pale and taut. It took me a moment to note other details. The uniforms were wrong. They were a simple, solid green. Their helmets were wrong too. It didn't make any sense. There was no way a vehicle would have just sat out here unnoticed for decades. Likewise, there was no way a unit would have dressed up in vintage uniforms, carrying vintage gear, just to fuck around out here. Then my eyes drifted to the vehicle. Against my better judgment I walked around and inspected it. The water cans in the back were empty, and the whip radio antenna was missing from its mount on the rear of the vehicle. I stood there at a loss, knowing what probably happened to these men but not understanding who it had happened to. I walked back around to the front of the vehicle and stopped. The man who was laying in the dirt was gone. What the fuck? I exhaled. Hey! A voice called from the far side of the immobilized Jeep. Not knowing what to say, I said nothing at all as I slowly started moving backwards, careful to make as little sound as possible. Hey, can you give us a hand? We're stuck here. I heard the driver's side door open and close but couldn't see what was happening as they went to work trying to free the Jeep. Hey! The voice called again, more urgent and louder. Hey, can you give us a hand? We're stuck here. I glanced to my truck, still apparently undisturbed only about 10 meters away. The problem, though, was that the only way to get to my truck was to go right by the passenger side door and cross the line of sight of whatever it was that I had stumbled upon. I wanted to run but found my feet too heavy to lift, so I used all my will to take another step backward, and just then I stepped on the one goddamned piece of vegetation within 50 meters of me. Crunch. Time slowed. The sounds of strain and digging coming from the far side of the Jeep stopped. For a mere second there was complete silence before a grotesque visage slowly peered out of the passenger side window and its cloudy eyes locked onto mine. Hey! It called, its voice muffled and by its swollen tongue. Before the shock wore off and I could begin running toward my truck, its deathly brethren came around at a trot, blocking my only clear path of escape. Hey! They called in unison, and I sprinted faster than I'd ever done before. I was driven by mad panic. Somehow I made it past them, barely slipping through their grasp. I jumped into the truck, turned over the ignition which caught on the first try, and threw it into reverse. I was peeling backward just as one of the forms grabbed onto the grill of the truck and began climbing up and over the hood. I swerved left and right trying to throw it off to no avail. It tore into the hood for purchase and kept right on coming. It anticipated and braced for every clumsy maneuver, and just as its hand firmly grasped the driver's side view mirror it began to shift and fade from reality. I was back on the main road, it was gone, and its compatriots stood off the main road as mute statues. They watched for moments before returning to their ceaseless task. I drove onward, leaving them behind, and ignored anything and everything else along the way. When I finally arrived at the next job, the group of soldiers waiting in the shade next to their broken-down M113 hurried over and helped me out of the vehicle. I heard muffled voices and looks of concern as I was led to the shade. Heat stroke. Hey doc, we're going to need to stick him. As I laid there and let them push about a liter of fluid into me, I stared at the front of my truck, now visible to me for the first time since the encounter. It was pretty fucked up. Handholds were cleaved from the metal paneling itself. Then I faded out. I woke up in a small clinic with both Mikey and my supervisor waiting nearby as a cool stream of saline fed into my arm. Don't break the rules again. My supervisor said, you are lucky to be alive, and you'll be restricted to light duty until you recuperate, just so you know. What happened? I asked, unsure of my experience. Well, based on how fucked up your truck was and the fact you were able to get to the second job site in under 2 minutes from your check-in, I'd say you broke the rules. It was real? Mikey and my supervisor glanced at one another for a moment. Yes. Absolutely. I thought we were pretty upfront about that. I just thought you were fucking with me. I sighed. I saw guys, corpses, stuck out there from another time. It looked like they got lost out there long ago. Well, that happens. All too often, actually. I can't tell you if they are echoes or what, or how time can cease to have meaning when you break the rules, but they were people. That I'm sure of. I guess they never let go. They never gave up hope. That desperation echoes through time, but it's only one of the more benign things out there. They left me alone, confident in my recovery, while I contemplated my supervisor's last words. I probably need to write all the rules down. Story 2, The Video Diary of Abigail Moore. I froze in place, phone to my ear, praying I wouldn't hear the words I knew were coming. I've got it, Scott. How? Why? It had been years since we last spoke, and after all that time she came to me with this. I wanted to beg her not to continue, but I couldn't find the words. I just stood there, until Megan broke the silence. I've got the Abby video. I'm watching it tonight. She should know as well as anyone to stay away from that video. She knew what happened to Jake. Was she so obsessed? Or had time dulled her fear? Megan, please. You can't. I spoke softly, still not knowing what to say. I've never gotten it out of my head, Scott. I need to watch it. For closure, if nothing else. I'll be fine, it's just a legend, you know? I just thought you should know. Bye, Scott. That was the last time I ever heard from Megan. I think I understood that as soon as she hung up the phone. I knew what she had, of course. I wish I could forget. She had the video diary of Abigail Moore. I was a freshman when my local high school introduced its short-lived attempt at videography courses. The school was small and didn't have many students in particular need of the new electives, but the classes were apparently approved by request of a local wealthy donor, one of the few people in our town with enough money to make a difference for the school. The school's push for video classes began and ended with an introductory course, which I and about 8 other people signed up for. I was lucky enough to share this class with Megan, who was, at the time, a good friend. We sat near a boy named Jake. He was a friend to me and something more to Megan. The three of us decided we would stick together to get through this course, planning to help each other in whatever video assignments were to come. And then there was Abby. Abby was the daughter of the wealthy donor who requested this class, so her presence wasn't surprising. I didn't know much about her, besides that her family had a lot of money and some peculiar interest in video. But she was kind and, by all accounts, one of the most passionate people in the school. There was always something about her, like a unique charm. But she didn't talk to most of us much. Not that she was shy, I think it had more to do with her being secretive. Students liked to spread some nasty rumors about her family, so I could understand her not wanting to open up much. Megan and Jake knew Abby a little better than I did, but I never really got the chance to ask them much about her. The class was taught by an old, fidgety woman named Mrs. Miller, who knew surprisingly little about the material. One of Mrs. Miller's early assignments involved making an introductory video to be presented in front of the class. We just had to come up with something to help the other students know a little more about who we were. The instructions were pretty vague, so students were able to think up their own ideas for the project. Some planned to keep things simple by recording themselves and their family giving some basic information on their lives. Others wanted to be more elaborate, with plans that included capturing spontaneous events or acting out memories from their past. Luckily for the students, the camcorders were provided for us. They were donated by Abby's father, and I can't imagine they were cheap. Once Mrs. Miller was done handing out the camcorders, we all got some time to discuss the assignment. Mrs. Miller doesn't know what she's doing. Just do a quick interview or something for the camera, it's an easy A, one student suggested. He may have been right. Mrs. Miller barely knew how to work the camcorders she distributed to us, and most of her grading scale was focused on completion instead of technique. I wondered what point there was to a class without someone knowledgeable enough to teach it. It's not just about the grade. It's art. We could all make something special if we try. Something we'll remember each other for, Abby responded. It was clear she cared more about this class than the rest of us. Unsurprising, given her family. Most of the class dismissed Abby, preferring to go for the easy A, but Megan was a little more supportive. Yeah. I mean, we never get to do stuff like this in other classes. We might as well have some fun with it and maybe make something cool, Megan said, looking to me and Jake for a response. Oh, sure, absolutely, Jake answered. We can get started at my house tonight if you all are up for it. At this point Abby moved closer to my little group, apparently glad to see someone showing something close to enthusiasm. What about you, Scott? I haven't heard you say anything yet, Abby asked, turning to face me. I was a little surprised that she talked to me instead of Megan or Jake. Well, I'll do my best. I don't really know what I'm doing. But yeah, like Megan said, it might be fun. I responded. Abby smiled. It's almost weird to think of her like that now, just happily chatting with classmates. I'm sure you'll do fine, Abby said. She motioned to Jake and Megan. You're getting help from those two, right? You three should make a great team. Yeah, I'm lucky to have them, I said. You know, Abby, you could work with us too if you want, Megan suggested. Jake looked a little apprehensive, but nodded in agreement when Megan glanced at him. Thanks, but I've already made some plans on my own. I'd just hold you guys back, Abby answered. She held up a camcorder and recorded a few seconds of us trying not to look like idiots. This can be a start, though. We'll all work together on the next project. Anyway, see you guys later, she said as she started to walk away from our group. Bye, Abby, I said back. That short conversation might have been the most I ever talked with Abby. The most I can remember, at least. Once she was far enough away, Jake made his apprehension more clear. Not sure we should be offering to work with her, he whispered. What? I thought you two were cool, I said. Megan agreed, surprised by Jake's comment. It's not her I'm worried about. It's her family, he explained. You two had to have heard the stuff people say about them by now. I even heard my dad talking about it before, being all secretive. Jake's dad was a cop. I knew students liked to gossip about the Moore family, but this was my first time hearing that the police were paying attention to it. Come on, they're just rumors, Megan argued. We don't have any reason to believe them. And even if we did, we can't blame Abby for whatever's going on with her parents. Be nice. We agreed to drop the subject. I worked with Jake and Megan over the next few days to make sure we were each ready for the class presentation that week. There were a few hiccups, but the videos came together well enough, and that Friday we arrived ready to show the class what we had. Students sat around laughing at each other's very amateur videos while Mrs. Miller clapped and gave encouraging praise. It was more fun than I expected, but it didn't take long for a feeling of unease and confusion to spread around the class. Abby hadn't shown up for the presentation. This didn't seem like too big of a deal at first. Sometimes students miss classes, it happens. But no one was as excited for the presentations as Abby. And she didn't often miss classes in general. It felt like with every second our curiosity would grow a little more. Where was she? Why wasn't she here? Megan and Jake exchanged worried looks. She should be here, they insisted. It's probably nothing to worry about, I said. But I felt it too. Something was off. I barely knew the girl, but her absence grew to be the only thing on my mind as the class went on. That is, until Mrs. Miller stepped to the front. Unfortunately, Abigail was unable to make it today. It seems she's come down with a cold, Mrs. Miller told us. Be sure to send her your prayers. But, she was kind enough to send in her project, so let's see how she did. I thought for a moment that we were all silly for worrying. Just a cold. She sent in her video. What was there to be concerned about? Nothing, I thought. I was wrong, of course. Mrs. Miller held Abby's video project, which was in the technologically advanced form of a DVD. She got everything set up and told us to pay attention and show the same respect we would if Abby was here. The class obeyed and silently waited for the video to begin. It started with music. There was a piano accompanied by what I believe was Abby humming. It was quiet, soothing, and simple. The sound seemed almost distant at first, but after a few seconds it was like it filled my mind. I was entranced, unable to think of anything other than the video playing in front of me as images began to appear. A compilation of scenes played, most showing Abby smiling or laughing to the camera. The earlier ones showed her as much younger, like they were taken from old home videos. As they went on, it seemed Abby's smile began to fade and she looked more concerned of whoever was holding the camera. Towards the end there was a quick moment showing myself, Megan, and Jake as Abby had recorded us in class. It was followed by a close-up of Abby's face, which now held a blank expression. The music stopped and the screen went black. This lasted for several seconds of complete silence until words began to appear. The video diary of Abigail Moore. I heard laughing as the words faded. It didn't sound like Abby. I wanted to look away then, but I could hardly think. The feeling of dread was overwhelming, and I knew I didn't want to see what would happen next. Still, I couldn't take my eyes off the video. The scene shifted to the terrible sight of Abby's parents, looking as though they were barely clinging to life, sitting on their floor. They looked old and withered. They were thin, alarmingly so, and their skin had become a bluish-gray color. Drool dropped from their lips. It looked like Abby's father was trying to speak, but he didn't have the strength. Abby's mother was struggling to keep her eyes open as she stared at something behind the camera. Abby walked into view and sat between her parents. They tried desperately to reach for her, but their hands quickly dropped. There wasn't enough life left in them to hold their daughter. There was no emotion on Abby's face, and she didn't move to help or even look at her parents. After a moment of silence, she looked into the camera and spoke. "A lot is gonna happen, but this is really important. You've got to watch until the end." We didn't. I was pulled out of my trance as Mrs. Miller shut off the video. She grabbed the DVD and ran out of the class in a panic without checking on the rest of us. A look around the room showed the confused and fearful faces of my fellow students. None of us understood what we had just seen, and none of knew what to do next. It was Jake who spoke first. "What the fuck?" The rest of the class shared similar sentiments. What were we to make of this? I still don't know the answer to that. Nothing about this made any sense. What happened to Abby and her parents? What was on the rest of the video? My thoughts were jumbled. I tried to talk with Megan and Jake, hoping one of them had the answers I lacked, but the only word I could manage to say was why? The school's principal eventually made his way to the classroom. He told us school was dismissed early that day. He said parents had been contacted and there would be an announcement soon to make our way to the buses. He sat with us until that announcement came. I don't remember much from that weekend. I was lost in thoughts, I suppose. Abby had been found dead. The cause wasn't made public. Nobody talked about what happened to her parents, but it was pretty clear they were dead too. My parents tried to talk to me about what I saw, but I didn't have much to say. They told me counseling was being offered for students from our class. I told them I was fine. Monday came with a change in schedules. The video class had been cancelled and Mrs. Miller had been fired. Maybe arrested too, as some people said. As time went on, rumors about the video began to spread. People claimed they had watched it, or had learned some relevant information. It was impossible to sit at lunch or walk through the halls without hearing some new claim about the video. After a while her parents die and she starts using them like puppets, with string and everything. I saw it myself. No way, Abby hangs herself about halfway through. But she keeps talking. That's what I heard. She tortured her parents. It's terrible. I know someone who watched the whole thing. Mrs. Miller is my aunt. She said the principal told her not to turn it off until it was over, but she couldn't go through with it. And she said she never even looked at the video herself. She knew it was bad news. She just watched the students' faces. It's haunted. Watching it invites a ghost into your house. That's why I watched it at a friend's house. It was clear that no one at our school had actually seen the full video, but people like to talk. I wondered if other students felt the same urge I did. To watch it until the end. Megan and Jake had that urge, I think. I could see it on their faces. Time passed, but I wasn't able to get the video off my mind. I wasn't the only one. Megan and Jake approached me between classes. "I've got the Abby video and we're gonna watch it," Jake told me. I took it from my dad. "We've got to watch it today before he notices it's gone." "We'll do it at my house, right after school," Megan said. "My parents won't be home, so we won't get caught." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What? "We need to stay the hell away from that thing," I told them. Jake said it's important. "He says we need to see it," Megan explained. "I'll fill you in before we watch it, but I need you to just trust me for now, alright?" Jake added, "Come on, Scott. I know you've been thinking about it too. We'll watch it today, and it'll all be over," Megan said. I reluctantly agreed. The three of us walked together to Megan's house when school ended that day. I told my parents we would be studying together. It was harder than usual to lie. I knew I was doing something I shouldn't be doing. When we got to Megan's room, Jake pulled a DVD out of his backpack. I was almost surprised. Jake wasn't known as a liar, but this video was so surrounded in rumor that it felt like no one should actually have it. Like it shouldn't be real. My dad watched some of it, Jake explained. For the police, you know. He didn't watch the whole thing. Another cop came in and took over after a while, and Dad did a report on the part he saw. Thing is, it changed him. Changed him how? I asked. Jake lifted his shirt to show badly bruised ribs. Oh my God. Your dad did this? Jake, I'm so sorry, Megan responded. I shared her concern. My mom got it worse, Jake continued. Dad got obsessed. He brought this thing home with him and I think he's gonna watch the whole thing. He's not supposed to take something like this home. I don't know if it's a copy or the original, but I think he might get in a lot of trouble for having it. He hasn't watched it yet, he just stares at the disc. Megan moved to comfort Jake. I tried to talk him out of watching the video. Jake, I'm sorry man, but if this thing can change people like your dad, we should stay away from it, I said. What do you think it'll do to us? He wasn't convinced. I don't fucking know, Scott. But I need to see what he saw that made him hurt his family. I need to see it. Jake, maybe. Megan tried to calm him down, but Jake interrupted. I need to see it. I could see it in his eyes. The urge. The obsession. I felt it too, but Jake had it worse. Part of me wanted to agree with him. It was wrong. Every bit of logic and reason I had told me not to watch the video. That we would see something we shouldn't ever see. But part of me didn't care about the logic and the reason, and just wanted to watch it until the end. I didn't listen to that part of me. Jake, we're not watching it. Whatever Abby went through, it's sick, man. This won't help us and it won't help your dad. We'll report what he did. We'll figure this out. It's just a video, Megan said. It's not gonna hurt us. But, Jake, maybe Scott is right. It won't help either, you know? Maybe we shouldn't watch it. They must have felt what I did when the video first played in the classroom, I thought. They must have known there's something about it that isn't natural. Look, there's something else I heard my dad saying, Jake explained. The cops noticed something hidden in the beginning parts, the parts that showed Abby when she was younger. There was something else with Abby and her family. There's this movement and shadows the cops kept seeing. They don't know what it is, but something has been around their family maybe since Abby was just a kid. This is too much, man. We need to give this thing back to the cops. I said that'll get my dad in a lot of trouble, Scott, Jake said. It might get him fired. What do you think he'll do to me and my mom then? So put it back where you got it from. Then we'll figure out what to do about you, Dad. No, not yet, Jake responded. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe we're supposed to watch it. We're in the video, right? The three of us. Maybe that means something. Or maybe you're obsessed, I said. Megan spoke up next. Guys, let's not fight about it, okay? Jake, please, just put it back and we'll help you get through this. But I need to. Jake, please, Megan insisted. It won't help. Fine. Okay. Jake finally said. I was relieved. Megan was about the only person Jake would consistently listen to, so I actually felt like we might be able to move on. There was still a lot to deal with, of course, Jake's father especially. But I thought we had successfully resisted our strange urge to watch the video. We spent some time talking, trying to ease Jake's mind, but it wasn't long before he needed to get home. He wanted to be back before his parents. Megan and I talked for a while about how best to move forward, and eventually I went home as well. I planned to talk with my parents about Jake's situation, but I didn't make it that far. Just as I stepped through my front door, I got a text from Megan. Jake isn't answering my calls. I briefly went through some possibilities in my mind, but deep down I knew why he wasn't answering. I should have broken the DVD in half myself, but I was afraid of how Jake's father would respond. Or maybe that's just an excuse I tell myself to sleep at night. After a few moments, Megan sent another text. I'm calling the cops. She did call the police, but they were too late. Jake had watched the video Diary of Abigail Moore. He was found in his parents' bedroom. He killed himself with one of his father's guns. His body was covered in scars, the cause of which couldn't be properly identified. Jake's mother had apparently arrived home while the video was playing. Parts of her body were found throughout the house. There was a lot of talk about what the police found in that house. Some say Jake, despite having shot himself in the head, hung on to life just long enough for the police, including his father, to hear him laughing as they arrived. One officer claimed they found a note in Jake's hand with a message that didn't match his or his mother's handwriting. Watch until the end. Megan never really got past Jake's death. It was, of course, our fault. We let him leave with the video, back to his abusive home. I didn't see her much after it happened. She moved to another school the next year. I stuck around long enough to finish high school, then left to another state for college. I didn't hear from Megan again until she called me out of nowhere claiming to have the video. I tried to stop her. I called the number she had used to contact me, but there was no answer. I tried giving the number to the police, but as far as I'm aware they didn't find her, and I'm not sure how far they'll go to chase what they probably saw as an urban legend. I've been thinking about the video a lot since I talked to Megan. Maybe Jake was right, in a way. Him and now Megan. I'm the only one left who hasn't watched it. Obviously I shouldn't. Jake is dead, and I've no idea what happened to Megan. I think she would have contacted me again by now if she was still alive. But there's this desire I can't get out of my head. It was there since the beginning, but I feel like it's stronger now. Like it's my turn. Jake, Megan, myself. The three of us were in the video. Maybe that means something. Story 3, I went missing for a year. I went missing for a year in 2013. It wasn't major news since I wasn't anyone's kid. But, my mom was on the verge of mental break when I finally managed my way back home, bloodied and broken. The things the prophet had done were unforgettable, permanently seared into my brain like a brand on skin. To be honest, I didn't even want to write this. My therapist said it would be a good coping mechanism and a way for my brain to process what really happened. So, since I'm writing this, I might as well post it somewhere. The reason I write now is because the anniversary of when I first went missing just passed, and it hit me hard that I lost a year of my life. It started on September 1, 2013, when I left my home in Chicago to move to college as a freshman. I was the first and only child out of my family to go away to college, so it was a big deal, but no one could help me move. I was on my own driving across country to the University of South Carolina. Both my parents worked and lived paycheck to paycheck, so there was no time off to take their son to school. But, that's beside the point. I packed my car the night before and left early Sunday morning after a long goodbye from my parents and brothers. My mom held me the longest and let tears stream from her eyes down to the tip of her chin before wiping them away. She laughed them off, and Dad hugged me the hardest, trying to will his strength into me, something I would need in the coming months. Deeper into the day, I hit Tennessee. I stopped for lunch and then got on my way. And that's when Appalachia came into view, and another reason why I will never drive through mountains ever again. I don't remember where I stopped off at, but I was running low on gas and energy. The car seemed to be running a little rough and I needed a monster before I fell asleep at the wheel. There was a small mountain town I stopped off at. All it had in sight was a rundown Citgo and a disgusting-looking roadside motel, if I can remember correctly. I was in the middle of the mountains, so I expected that type of quality. I pulled into the Citgo and got out, stretching my arms and legs while I took in the giant trees and mountains before me. My knees cracked, and my back popped loudly as I moved towards the door. Two vacant rocking chairs flanked the entrance, and a bearded man behind the counter's window stared at me. There was a phone pinched between his ear and shoulder as he did something behind the counter. The door squealed loudly as it opened and a burst of moldy air conditioning hit me. I stopped on my heels, glancing to the man behind the counter. "You got a bathroom?" I asked, peering over the counter. "In the corner behind the beer fridge. Sink's busted." He pointed to the far end of the dimst door. Just beyond the chip island next to the fridge full of cheap beer was a darkened hallway with a door at the end leading to storage. Another door adjacent to storage room opened to the only bathroom. I relieved myself and quickly left, fearing something would jump out at me and stab me with a used needle. Sorry about the sink. Damn thing sprays water everywhere. He said over his cheek full of tobacco. His name tag said Daryl and so did his haircut. Long greasy locks fell out of the sides of his trucker hat with a Citgo logo on it. It was stained so bad that the white front was now a creamy brown. All good. Let me have 20 on pump 2. I slid a 20 to him. You got it. He hit some buttons and put the 20 away. I turned on my heels and made for the door. Chicago kid, huh? He asked with a smirk on his face. What you doing round these parts? He spit into a plastic bottle. Brown drool fell to his chin. How do you know I'm from Chicago? I asked, stopping at the door. Daryl stared at me, wiping at his chin. He smirked. Illinois plates. Chicago accent. He spit again, this time not needing to wipe. He set the bottle down. I stood in the threshold, eyeing the man behind the counter. He knew something I didn't. The air conditioning shut off and all was quiet in the store besides my heart rate. I shook my head. Nah, from Central Illinois, man, I lied. Completely shook, I stepped onto the concrete and let the door close behind me. Daryl snorted. I pumped my gas, closed the gas cap and walked to the driver's side door. I looked at the counter window and Daryl was there, staring, phone pressed against his ear, nodding. He smiled at me and waved. I got in the car and sped off toward the interstate. Down the road, I got into the turn lane to get back on the highway but the entrance was closed for maintenance. No one was working and the on-ramp was tore up. An eerie feeling crept up my spine and thoughts began to creep into the back of my head. As I plugged my destination into my Jeeps, those thoughts slowly chewed through my brain, making my hands shake. You're fine dude, chill. Google Maps gave me a route through mountain roads to the next on-ramp 12 miles away. Oh, fun. Let's hang out in the mountains a bunch and meet the guys Deliverance was based on. Cool. Yeah. Awesome. Go me. I sped off down the road with the sun setting fast behind me. The main road led me deeper into a thick forest that blocked out the minimal light still shining. My automatic lights came on. The road then led to a mountain road that twisted on the side of deep mountain with no guard railing. One side was thick bedrock and the other was a steep drop into the forest floor. I took it slow while the occasional car sped toward me and past me. I breathed heavily and made my way toward the highway. I never got there. The last thing about that road trip I can remember is the sudden burst of adrenaline I got as my car flew over the edge of the road. I woke up in a brick room with a single window letting bright sunlight in. The light hit my eyes and made me flinch, searing pain shot through my head. I rolled over and moaned but my arm shot fire up to my shoulder. I swore loudly and sat up. I looked at my arm. Stitches made a jagged zipper up my forearm and a splint held my middle, ring, and pinky finger together. What the hell? I glanced around the small brick room. I was on a cot in the far corner. Crutches were left against the wall to my left and a metal door was on the opposite end of the room. The light shone through a small skylight with a logo of an owl on it. I swung my legs off my cot and noticed my right leg was in a walking boot. I stood. My joints popped, and pain radiated from my back around to my ribs. I coughed which shot spikes in my sides. I grabbed my crutches and limped towards the door, wondering where I was. There was no handle though. Just a thick piece of metal welded into a brick wall. My head pounded, and my body ached. Everything screamed for me to sit down. I ignored them all and pounded my good hand on the door. Hey! I'm up. Let me out. I yelled. There was some muffled talking and an electronic voice came back over. Give us a few minutes, sir. Trying to get our overseer here to let you out. Thanks for your patience. Where am I? I asked, wobbling like a drunk man. I steadied myself on the crutch under my right arm. Lansdowne Grove. You're safe from it all. The voice was male and very young. What? What do you mean safe from it all? I didn't get a response. I limped back to the cot and laid my head down. I fell back asleep. I don't know how long it was, but I woke to the door bursting open and bright light pushing its way in. "Hello there," a calming voice said. I put a hand up in front of the light to try to see who it was. "How are we feeling today?" "Like hell." "What happened?" I swung my legs off the cot again and snagged my crutch before getting to my feet. "When the bomb went, your car went off of the side of the mountain and into a tree. We thought you died," he said. His silhouette stood in the door with his hands at his sides. I couldn't make out features. I slowly made my way toward him as I processed what was just said. "What bomb?" I remember stopping off at a rest stop and then not being able to get back on the interstate. "Where am I?" I made my way to him. He stepped out and to the side to let me through. I was staring at more trees, but to the right was the entrance to a compound built with brick and barbed wire. I stopped. "You're at Lansdowne Grove. The community of tomorrow." He swung his hand toward the gate, showing it off. He wore white robes that had gold trim around the collar and sleeves. He was bald with thick brown eyebrows and short, brown beard on his cheeks. "Okay, that's the second time I've heard that. But what is it?" I eyed him while I leaned back on the door. Lansdowne Grove is a religious movement aimed at rebuilding society and moving the human race into the next generation. He smiled brightly, showing off perfect teeth. My head hurt and it all was too much. "Great, yeah, cult stuff. What's your name, pal?" I gestured to him without moving my body too much. "My name is Caleb. I'm the intake manager and guide. I'm here to help you get adjusted to our community after we get you baptized." He shifted his weight. "Baptized? What the hell do you mean, baptized?" I laughed at him. My body ached too much to be dealing with this. "Yes. In order to join our community, you must be baptized by the prophet." He put his hand over his heart. "He is heading to the river as we speak. So, we should get a move on." He stepped past me and closed the door. He shuffled past me and around the building. I followed. "What bomb went off?" I tried hard to keep up while I was on the crutch. We were going up a small embankment. My right knee screamed with pain. "We're not entirely sure who dropped it, but most of the US is desolate now. Almost all major cities are gone." He picked up the pace. I tried to follow suit. "What?" I was dumbfounded. "What about Chicago?" I asked, poking him with my crutch in between steps. "Gone." He kept his eyes forward. "No way. That's impossible. Our government wouldn't have allowed that to happen." Thoughts of my family pushed their way into my mind, ones where I'd never see them again. I shook my head free of them. "Impossible." Caleb kept walking, his robes fluttering in the wind. The hill leveled out and Caleb chose a footpath through the trees and bushes. "You're going to love the prophet." Caleb turned toward me as I pushed past a thick shrub. "He's a great guy and always makes this a lot of fun." "Oh, I'm sure he's just going to be a treat," I said sarcastically. "What's his real name?" "We don't ask those questions around here, Ryan." We walked for a few yards while I thought about when I mentioned my name. I stopped. "Caleb," I tilted my head. "I never told you my name." He stopped and turned. He looked at me with indignation, like he couldn't believe I'd ask such a dumb question. "You had your wallet in the car. Your ID said you were Ryan Rietkin from Arlington Heights, Illinois. Your phone was smashed to pieces and the can of whatever drink you had exploded over the front seat. You were, and are, in rough shape." He smiled and turned. He opened a gate that appeared out of nowhere and led me onto the bank of flowing river. He stopped. "You coming? Or are you going to subject yourself to the wilderness?" I looked around before answering. A group of similarly dressed people had amassed on the opposite bank. About 20 yards downstream was a large boulder that sat in the middle of the river, just before it dropped somewhere down the hill we climbed. I hesitated when I finally caught eyes with Caleb again. I nodded. I bent over and took my walking boot off as well as my lone shoe. I laid them down next to the crutch just out of the river's reach. I waded in after Caleb, who led me toward the boulder. We stopped 10 feet from it and watched the sun slowly begin to make its descent on the horizon. The group of people began to sing next to us. As I went down to the river to pray, studying about that good old way, the rich tenor sang out. A chill ran up my spine as the water rushed around me. I turned to Caleb. Prophet on his way? Damn, water's pretty cold. Oh, sisters, let's go down, come on down. Caleb pointed in the direction of the rock. I was caught staring at the choir. Oh, sisters, let's go down, down to the river to pray. They were mostly men with a few women mixed in. They wore white robes as well, but their trim and inlay was red along the collar and sleeves. Their hands were clasped together as they sang. The men were bald. All the women had tight ponytails. I took my attention from the choir and turned my body toward the rock. A man stood there, his head tilted upward toward the sky and arms spread apart with his palms skyward. Brothers, his voice boomed. The choir continued, but in a hushed tone. And who shall wear the robe and crown? Good Lord, show me the way. Let us all praise the heavenly light for giving us a brand new member of our community. His tilted his head down to meet mine. And let him take this trial easily. I raised an eyebrow at him. We all have taken the river into the town, and we are the strong ones. We were gifted the light. His bald head shined in the sunlight. Thick wrinkles ran across his forehead. An even thicker beard ran down his face and hung off his chin. He smiled at me, showing crooked teeth. Ryan, please step forward. I obeyed, confused by not only what was happening, but the concussion as well. In just a few moments, you will be taking the ride of your life down this river. Only the strong make it and are gifted the light by the Heavenly Father who has entrusted his duty within me. Do you wish to join our community? I looked around. The choir was still singing and was gaining strength again. Oh brothers, let's go down, come on down. Come on, brothers, let's go down to the river to pray. I hesitated again. Yeah. The prophet looked relieved and took a deep breath. He put a hand on my shoulder. His robes were all white with a gold belt that hugged his hips. I glanced at his right hand on my left shoulder. He was missing his ring finger down to the first digit. A tattoo ran up his hand onto his forearm, but I couldn't make out the writing. My vision swam as my head pounded. Oh, Heavenly Father, he looked up to the sky again. Shine your never-ending light on this young one. He will need your strength to make it into our community. The new world will need him, and I pray to you, please, watch over him during this short journey. He opened his eyes and looked at me. Okay, Ryan. Step around to the edge. He brought me past the boulder and showed me to the edge of river that soared down at a steep grade with rocks and other obstacles. It flowed down to a flat surface and took a tight turn into a gated area protected by more fencing. My jaw dropped. No shot. I shook my head in disbelief. It is the only way, brother. He put his hand on my shoulder, again, something I was beginning to hate. His grip dug into the muscles surrounding my shoulder. He smiled again, showing his crooked teeth that seemed too crowded for his small mouth. Listen man, I'll do a lot of shit to stay alive, but this is practically suicide in my condition. I craned my neck to see him kneeling on the boulder beside me. Ryan, he smiled at me and tightened his grip. It is the only way. The grip turned into a push and I went face first down into the river. Story 4, what would you do for $1 billion? My name is Xenia Dimopoulos. I have no reason to hide my identity, as I have accumulated immunity from the things I have done and the people I hurt. He promised to protect me, through all my endeavors. So, with that being said, a simple name can't hurt me. I was born in a small town located in Greece, named Parga, though I have since moved to the States. There is nothing left for me in my hometown, and I am sure you will come to understand why. It started about a year ago. My family and I were celebrating my 19th birthday, nothing too special. I was scrolling through Facebook, and noticed something was off. I only had around 70 people on my friends list, so when I saw an unknown name in my news feed, I was immediately confused. The name itself isn't important. It was the post that caught my eye. What would you do for $1 billion? Not often did my friends share things like this, not to mention in Greece, our currency is euros. Perhaps it is because we pride ourselves in working hard for our money and don't take it lightly. I know you're supposed to be light-hearted about these kinds of things, but it just wasn't in our nature. I decided to step out of the norm and comment on it. Anything. I chuckled and closed the app, ready to continue the celebration with my family. I was off to college soon, and my year of traveling was over. Or at least, I thought it was. I sat down at the table, the empty seat beside me becoming bothersome. I tried to put it out of my mind as my family smiled brightly at me while my mother brought out the cake. I felt my phone buzz in my pocket. My friend, Cersei, was running late, so I thought it was her. I let my mother set down my cake before opening the text. Ruin the cake. I was once again confused. The text came from an unknown number. Of course, at the time, I thought it was just a friend messing with me, so I let the screen go black and continued on with my party. Cersei never showed up, which was highly annoying, but I forgot about it eventually. I had plenty of friends and family present to make up for it. After a long night of celebrating and being surrounded by people, I decided to break away after most of my family left. I walked down to the shoreline, basking in the moonlight and breathing in the fresh air. I would soon not have the privilege of this any longer, and I wanted to remember it. Of course I would come back to my hometown on vacations and such, but it wasn't the same. My phone buzzed yet again, bringing me out of my thoughts. Run into a moving car. It was from an unknown number yet again. Who is this? Run into a moving car. I decided to turn off my phone for the rest of the night, enjoy the water and breeze until I went to bed. Upon waking up, I saw I had a text. Cut your mother's hair off while she is sleeping. Who is this? You said you would do anything for $1 billion. Cut your mother's hair off while she is sleeping. I laughed out loud. Someone must have made a fake account and used my phone to add themselves. But how could they guarantee I would comment on their silly post? It was a shot in the dark on their end, but a prank nonetheless, that much I was certain of at the time. I had a wig from one of my old plays at school, so I decided to send them a picture with its lock of hair. Your mother's hair is blonde, and she is going to be waking up soon. If you want the money, I would suggest hurrying. Her alarm is set to go off in 10 minutes. I would have been scared, had I have known it wasn't a friend or a family member texting me. They would know the color of her hair, or even the time she started getting ready for work. It wasn't ominous, it was laughable. I exited my room and peeked into my mother's to see her sound asleep. I smiled half-heartedly. In a week I would be studying in Spain, no longer in the comforts of my own home. You look so sad. It's just a piece of hair. My eyes started around to take in my surroundings, but my mind could not be bothered with comprehending the gravity of this situation. 7 minutes until her alarm goes off and she changes out of her grey nightgown and into her work uniform. Who is this? 6 minutes. This is your last chance. After that, Cersei will be your only way to $1 billion, and I don't think you would like that. A picture was attached to the message. Cersei was seemingly unconscious in the middle of a cement floor. I had no time to think, only to react. I grabbed a pair of scissors and hurriedly ran back into my mother's room. I cringed as I heard the snip. My mother adored her hair and I ruined it. But, if this wasn't a prank, a lock of hair was a small price to pay for my friend. After sending the photo, my phone buzzed. Good. You're one step closer. You didn't say I had to do anything else. You said you would do anything. I intend to take advantage of that. Perhaps, you should have been more specific. Better advice for next time. Dealing with my mother's anger wasn't easy. I felt unsafe explaining to her why I did it. Perhaps it would make the rest of this easy. She refused to speak to me the rest of the day. I was worried sick about Cersei, awaiting another damning text with instructions. It wasn't about the money. It never was. It was now about her safety. The text finally came after midnight. Run into a moving car. They were repeating a text from earlier, and my delirious mind told me it was a mistake. That the text had just sent itself again. I knew better. Walking down to the street wasn't easy. My legs barely complied with what I needed them to do. I would save Cersei at all costs. I lived in a residential area, so I was praying that 20 miles an hour wouldn't hurt too much. I waited on the side of the street, waiting to hear a car. My ear perked at the sound of an engine revving. It was coming from no more than 500 feet away. As the headlights shone at the top of the hill, I made my way to the middle of the street. It was coming too fast, much faster than the speed limit. I didn't have time to move or to think. I closed my eyes in anticipation and fear, waiting for my bones to be crushed and my blood to be drained. Second turned to minutes and I opened my eyes to the car inches away. They didn't honk, didn't yell at me to move. They just sat there, headlights blinding me and fear rooting me in place. My phone went off and shortly after the car drove around me and down the street, out of sight. It took what felt like years for me to sit down on the side of the road. My heart was pounding inside my chest and my face was wet with sweat and tears. I took my phone out of my pocket and opened the text. I thought about actually hitting you, but it wouldn't be as fun that way. Now that I know you are willing to die for your friend, are you willing to allow others to die as well? I stared at the message, dread setting into my already quivering body. What do you mean? But I knew what they meant. I just couldn't say it out loud. Doing that would ensure it was real, and I was immensely unprepared. You could start with a distant relative. It would be easy. Just slip into their house in the middle of the night and hold a pillow over their head. People pass away in their sleep all the time. No one would be the wiser to what you did. It isn't easy, pondering a family member's death. Even more so when you're expecting to inflict it, not matter how merciful or gruesome it may be. Another buzz from my phone, this time only a picture. Cersei was dangling from a ceiling, her face caked with dirt and dried tears. I tried to think of the family member I would miss the least. Or one whose suffering I could end. None came to mind as we were all healthy and extremely close to one another. I had a grandma who lived to be over a century. Cersei didn't deserve this. Neither did any of my family members. And to be frank, I hadn't done anything massive enough for this curse to be bestowed upon me. I had simply commented on a public post. All of that didn't matter. If someone was sly enough to capture Cersei with her family being in the dark about it, they had the potential to take out my entire family. I set out to my uncle Nico's house. I don't know why I chose him, I just did. I waited for night to fall and did exactly as the text said. By daybreak I was at home in the kitchen, preparing breakfast for my mother in attempt to gain forgiveness for what I had done to her. And her brother. She spoke to me in a tearful choke, telling me how my aunt had discovered her late husband in the bed beside her. I held her as we both cried together, for separate reasons. The funeral was that day, as we all gathered around his grave site and wept together. My aunt was holding a celebration of life at her house afterwards. With my family surrounding me, I felt guiltier by the second. They were all mourning the loss of their loved one, unaware his murderer was in the room with them. I had to step outside to take a deep breath. My phone buzzed and I cursed at it. I wanted to scream, and to tell them all of my sins, but I couldn't. Burn the house down. My entire family was in that house. Our funerals always had a big turnout due to how close we held family. I am a very impatient man, Xenia. I am sure Cersei can agree to that much. The longer you wait, the worse her injuries get. If you don't burn it down, I will. And then I will proceed to kill Cersei and you will live the rest of your life alone. I will live the rest of my life in jail. This is my family, isn't there another way? I can assure you that the police will never know you did it. Burn the house down. Say your goodbyes. I walked back inside, a numbing pain coursing through my heart. Family is everything to me. My mother alone has helped me through so much. I hugged them all, told them I would be back in a while. That I needed to clear my head. I drove for miles, my phone buzzing off and on. The gravel underneath my tires indicated I had arrived at my destination, though my mind had been on autopilot. In front of me was the house Cersei and her boyfriend lived at. The second picture had given it away. If my diminished sanity still believed this was a prank, it was a sick one. I exited my car and walked straight to the cellar door. My legs were sure of themselves this time. I opened the door and walked inside, seeing Cersei sitting in the corner of the basement next to Xander. No injuries were noticeable on her body. Their eyes widened as they saw me. I didn't wait for them to speak or to move. I raised my gun towards them. What would you do for $1 billion? Would you beg for your life? Sacrifice yourself for your lover? They cowered in fear before me. We didn't expect it to go this far, Xenia. I swear it. Cersei was the first one to speak, her eyes betraying her voice. You're a liar. My voice was unwavering and cold. You forced me to do so many vile things. My uncle is dead because of you. That was your decision, not ours. The money is yours, we are sorry for your loss. This doesn't have to go any further. Xander was attempting to distract me, but I saw his hand move. The icy anxiety had made my vision somehow keener. My ears rang as the gun went off, the bullet hitting Xander somewhere below his chest. My body felt like it had needles pricking it all over the place. Cersei let out a sob. The numbness was overwhelming. I don't remember shooting her, but I did. She crumbled to the floor. I took care of the scene, scribbling out a suicide note that was hopefully believable. He promised me immunity, and I was ensuring it happened. I took the money with me, spent the rest of my days with my grieving family and relocated to the States. I needed a place to vent my frustrations, to relay my emotions and the events of the past week. I plan to visit my family during winter break, but I can't even get the courage to contact them presently. My mother is suspicious of me not staying to mourn the loss of my friends. How tragic, she had said. If I tell her the truth, I will be disowned and imprisoned. But, I guess, I know what I would do for $1 billion. Story 5, Buying fresh clean meat for dinner. One of the chores that I really hated more than ever was going to the market every other day. It's not that I don't love my family. I do with all my heart. I could never imagine life without them. But there are days that certain mundane things tend to drag one down. Today it's market day, and I have to make sure that everything's really fresh. It's very important that the ingredients are fresh, or I'd have the whole house on my head complaining about the waste of resources. Sometimes they make it like a joke, but oftentimes it gets really callous. Scanning the rows of beef and pork hanging by huge hooks, I asked some of the vendors about where the meat came from, who sold it, if they're trusted, the usual round questions. Money is never a question, we can shell out the amount as long as the supply and demand is given. One vendor in particular found this to be more than interesting. Herbert, mind your manners, old man Freddie said as he helped me with my latest purchase. Her family is our biggest client for fresh meats. Don't you start giving her jitters or she won't buy from us anymore. Here I turned my head and was met by a pair of chocolate warm brown eyes set in an oval face. Lean, tall, and smiling, the one called Herbert stared a bit more, his smile never wavering, before going back to the butcher's area, with a lot of words that I'm sure any mom and gracious lady of the house would frown upon. At this I took my share, checking him out for what seems like forever before turning to Freddie. He's new here. I don't recall seeing him when I came here a fortnight ago. Freddie took his towel and wiped the sweat from his brow before answering. Oh, he's been here for a while now, just at the back area. Joey was sick so I had him cover while he recovered from his cold. The medicine you gave him helped. He'll be back by Tuesday. I nodded, and then started to ask him question about his background. Better safe than sorry. He shook his head at me, amused by my sudden interest before he chimed, "Ah. You like him? I smiled at him, one of my rare smiles. Freddy understood, and said he'll check further and let me know more details about him. Thank you, Freddy. You're the best. He sighed and patted me on the shoulder. It's the least I could do. Now run along, I'll have the meats over at your house in 2 hours. 3 days later, and I was having a warm cup of coffee at Seattle's with Herbert. He was sporting a baby blue shirt and rugged jeans, emphasizing his build. Thanks again for the lunch you brought yesterday. That was delish, he said as he was finishing his cup. I nodded, enjoying how the afternoon glow of the sun played effects with his lightly tanned skin. I noticed how the girls from the other table kept looking at him, and I had to smile. His shirt hugged his body in all the right places, showing off his muscular chest and rather strong arms. His dark shoulder-length locks played lightly in the wind, giving the impression of him being a surfer rather than one working at a butcher's shop. You certainly know how to turn heads here, I mused, playing with my coffee as I turned to look at him. The smoldering look in his eyes could not be mistaken, yet I'm used to such looks. Lust, I rationed, had its ways of being known, and this one made no bones about it. He loved the attention, but more than that he loved how I was showering him with lots of it, cash and attention. My smile grew ever slightly when I saw the message on my phone. I believe that I'm needed home now. Folks are a tad concerned over my last purchase. Is it okay if I ask you to come along? I may have a better fit for you than that shirt you're in. Oh. He got up faster than was usual and accompanied me to the parked Honda Civic. It was only a 30-minute drive, but he sure took his time, making almost every turn and traffic stop as an excuse to kiss me and such. Sweet, but I know he wanted something else. Well, I thought to myself, he'll get more than what he wants. Arriving at our destination, one could not help but look at it in awe. I call it a house, but most people would call it a mansion. Father called it Hardington Manor. From the tall iron gates to the arched driveway one would take about 20 minutes on foot. Upon arriving, I could not help but smile at my guest's expression. I can actually hear gears whirring inside his head. Ka-ching. At the door, I searched in my bag for the keys to the huge ornate door with the lion head knocker. Shaking my head, I sighed and reached for my phone. Left your keys? Yup. My sister must have fallen asleep again too by the couch. But I think that's her walking to the door now. Is it okay if you be by the door and say hello to her while I check on something by the car? I think I left something, and when he said yes I dashed back 5 steps on the marble steps to my car. Inside I rummaged for the bottle of white wine that I always keep in stock for such occasions. I heard a scuffle, some muffled screams and a thud before turning around to see the door ajar. Smiling, I closed the car door and walked back towards the house. How do you like our new visitor? Told you he smells wonderful, didn't I? I called out as I hurriedly closed the door, locking it with the matching skeleton key from inside my bag, and dropped the large iron deadbolt on place. A low raspy voice coming from somewhere in the house answered, he smells wonderful. And fresh. He's so fresh. Not like the last one. I laughed as I answered back to a seemingly empty parlor, I was not the one who brought the other one home. That was Marie. And don't worry, Charlotte. Freddy checked him thoroughly before I took him home. No one will find him. Call the others. I'm famished. That night the whole family came for dinner. The house was built with deep caverns and caves that go more than 20 feet below the house. Waking up each member of the household was easy given that the meals confirmed fresh and clean. The young ones couldn't yet eat raw meat, same as with our grandparents, and such my sister Marie, my brother Gavin and I help out by slicing and cutting chunks of flesh from Herbert, mixing it with some pork and beef, and making it into a puree mix. The table is alive with talk and presents. My grandparents from both sides of the family, my parents, and my 7 siblings and I gather round the meal, savoring the tangy taste and aroma of fresh man meat. With sewn lips and horror-glazed eyes, Herbert could only scream and moan with each cut and slice on his frame. I'm the only one in my family who can go out and buy clean food, I explained to him as I leaned closer to his sweat and tear-stained pallor. Until my younger siblings are old enough to join me, I'm the one going out every other day. Freddy is in our pay, and we keep him within our satisfied grasp while he continuously supply us with meat. Otherwise, I said as I raked down one long claw against his skin, the whole city will pay for our hunting trips. My youngest brother Sean howled with delight as his second serving of blood was brought to him. He tastes great, Ethel. So sad that he's only one of a kind. His furry frame bounced and shook with pleasure as he sipped his serving. Old man Freddy said that he has some cousins that he can bring into the shop. Immediate family is out of the question. But we can check on his other relatives, and I howled back in return. Growls of evil glee echoed through the dark caverns. True, the additional step of checking our meals by smell each time we go to market is tedious. But one cannot be too careful. After all, one cannot be too careful and too fresh when it comes to family. Story 6, The Thing in Manzanita Hall. I'm an investigative reporter for a local paper in the Phoenix metropolitan area. I won't say which one, but if live in the area you've probably heard of it. As October is coming up, I thought it would be an interesting puff piece to investigate a rumor about one of the floors of an ASU dorm being haunted. The rumor goes that back in either the late 80s or early 90s, on the third floor of Manzanita Hall, a couple of students were murdered late one night. As anyone who is familiar with ASU and Manzanita Hall in particular would know, that most of the students that lived in the hall were out at a raging party in another hall, and 4 lonely students were left in the hall to whittle the midnight hours away studying for whatever tests they were preparing for. No one knows exactly what happened, as all of these types of stories go. But when the first of the partying college students got home, they left the elevator to a third floor of horrors. Every door was open and there were blood splatters everywhere. The stories vary a bit on the details, how many body parts are in what areas and what not. Some say there was a human torso in the hallway. Some say there was blood on the ceiling. The only detail the stories seem to agree on is the presence of a dismembered human hand holding onto the doorknob, as if whoever was trying to run had it cut off as they attempted to escape. And ever since those terrible murders, the 4 students haunt the hall and do all of the usual things angry ghosts do. Turn off the TVs randomly, knock over lamps, whisper into quiet students' ears while they're trying to study. Sounds like a good ghost story, right? I thought so at the time. It would make a nice little story for the scary month of October to distract our readers from the actual horrors of the real world. A nice break from the real world is exactly what I needed as well. This is about the time where I'm supposed to say that I regret looking into this story, but I honestly don't know what to think about it. So it started with this rumor about a grisly quadruple murder on the third floor of a college dorm. Easy enough to check the veracity of that with back issues of the paper and a possible trip to my local police station. Like most rumors and stories of a place being haunted, it was based in a modicum of truth. The exact date was September 14, 1989. The only story posted about the event didn't mention any grisly murders or students partying late in the night. However, it did mention a gas leak causing the hospitalization of 2 students and the death of a third one. An EMT quoted in the article said that it was lucky there weren't more people in the hall when it happened. There were some details missing in the article, but it seemed like the perfect instigating event for the haunting of a college dorm room. I had most of what I needed for the article already and could probably get away with this information only. But my journalistic integrity demanded I fill in the holes in the original article that bothered me so much. The first was obvious enough. If there was no one else in the hall and everyone was passed out from the gas leak, then who the hell called the EMTs in the first place? No more answers were to be had in the archives of my newspaper, as the event was never mentioned again. After being annoyed at my predecessors for their lack of due diligence, I decided to head to the friendly neighborhood police station and look at any call records they had for September 14, 1989. About 15 minutes after starting the search for the call records, I found the details of the 911 call to Manzanita Hall at 12:42 p.m. Now this may be news to some of you, but back in 1989 not every 911 call was taped and kept on record for eternity and a day at some on-site server. However, I was in luck when the call listed the responding officer on the scene as one Officer McDonald. A lucky break, not because I knew an Officer McDonald, but because I knew a Detective McDonald. Turns out he wasn't too busy at that moment, so I met him at his office. "How's the wife and kids, McDonald?" "We aren't friends, Thomas. You're here for some story or another, so just spit it out." I sighed. Seems I caught him in one of his more frustrated moments, which meant he would probably be telling me to get the hell out of his office sooner rather than later. "You ever heard that rumor about the third floor of Manzanita Hall being haunted?" I said. He turned from his computer to look at me. "Looks like I had the right McDonald." I continued, "I know you were the responding officer to the gas leak in 1989. I had a couple of questions about the incident, if you could answer them." "It wasn't an incident. 4 people died because what happened there, so don't make light of the situation," he responded before turning back to his computer. The article about the gas leak mentioned only 1 death and not even by name." "I thought there was only 1 death caused," I tried to say before being interrupted. He burst out of his seat and yelled, "Get the hell out of my office." I had seen this man angry on many occasions, but this sudden outburst was of the variety that told me I wouldn't be getting any more information out of him on this subject today. Possibly ever. In order to save any capability to be nice to me and answer any more of my questions in the future, I left his office without any further arguing on my part. Since I wasn't going to have any luck on the police front, I tried calling ASU and see if they had any records of the students who were involved in the accident. A flood destroyed a good chunk of their records for the previous year, and the entirety of Manzanita Hall housing records were one of the many victims of said flood. I'm a reporter, not an idiot, so I knew something was up at this point. Of course, without any records to back up my theory, the only thing I could do was go home and try to wake up early enough to hit the courthouse records and try to find a death certificate for the student who died during the gas leak. I was very surprised to get woken up by a phone call at 8 a.m. "Hello?" I said groggily. It was Patty, the middle-aged woman who ran the front desk. "Hey Tom, Detective McDonald just dropped and asked for you. I told him that you wouldn't be in until 9. I offered to take a message, but he just left in a huff after handing me a folder stuffed with a bunch of papers." "Have you looked through the folder yet?" "I'm not a reporter, Tom. That's your job," she said before she hung up the call. The sudden generosity on debt. McDonald's part confused me, but I wasn't about to look a gift horse in the mouth, so I drove as fast as I could to my office. "You managed to be early for a change," Patty said to me as I came to the front desk. "That folder on my desk?" She looked at me like I had asked if the Pope lived in the Vatican. Dumb question. "Hold my calls for the next hour, Patty." She flipped me off as I passed by. We had fun. The front of the folder on my desk had a note attached to the front. These are all the records of what happened. I would ask you not to publish anything about it, but I'm pretty sure you won't. Was all the note said. Ominous. But I had been reporting on various murders and horrible accidents for over a decade at this point and built a pretty good tolerance for the horrors of a gory crime scene. What I found, though, I don't think I can publish in anything reputable. Maybe Fortean magazine takes freelance stories. But of course I'm off subject again. I'll try to summarize what I found so this doesn't ramble on too much. 12:42 a.m. A 911 call came from Manzanita Hall on the ASU campus. One of the students on the second floor described the sound he heard as an ear-piercing scream muffled by cheap particle board. 12:44 a.m., dispatch sent the call for a possible home invasion with over the police bands. Car 22 accompanied by an EMT team answered the call and began driving towards Manzanita Hall. 12:49 a.m., Officer McDonald and Officer Reagan arrive at Manzanita Hall and proceed to the third floor. 12:57 a.m., the EMT team waiting outside for an all clear from the officers report 3 shots fired from the third floor. 1:04 a.m., Officers MacDonald and Reagan report an all clear on the third floor. 3 possible injuries. 1:25 a.m., hospital reports a DOA on 1 student. The other 2 are transferred to ICU. 2:30 a.m., the second student flatlines and is pronounced dead. Cause of death is listed as due to blood loss from severe injuries. 3:32 a.m., third student flatlines and is declared dead due to blood loss from severe injury. Those are the basic details I gleaned from the first 20 pages of police and hospital records that were encased in the folder. There was only one more paper and I didn't have much hope of it answering any more questions. It did, but not in the way that I hoped. The last page was a sworn witness statement from Officer Reagan taken at 5:32 a.m. on September 14. An odd occurrence under normal circumstances but not considering what the statement said. I, Officer Riley Reagan, swear that this statement is true under the penalty of perjury. Dispatch put the call out for a possible home invasion on the 3rd floor of Manzanita Hall at 44. Officer MacDonald and I were the closest to the scene and answered the dispatch along with an EMT just a minute behind us. When we approached Manzanita Hall, the student residents who were in the building on the 1st and 2nd floor were already outside of the building. When questioned, they told us that there was loud crashing sounds coming from the 3rd floor along with screaming and yelling. The sounds were loud enough to frighten the residents out of the building. Most of the residents were currently out partying at another hall, so the hall had minimal residents currently inside it. MacDonald and I decided to enter the 3rd floor for any possible casualties and possibly prevent any more. After we opened the 3rd floor. After we opened the. I'm sorry. I can't do this. Yes, I know it's important. Just read the CSI reports. Okay. I was the first one to open the door. The first thing I noticed was that the lights were out and the only sound from the entire hall was the sound of TV static coming from an open door on our right-hand side. It was eerie. You would expect a dorm room full of students to make more noise. The hum of an AC unit spitting cold air. An errant TV being watched by a pair of students laying in a bed not paying attention to it. Maybe the sounds of a louder pair of students in bed. Despite the lack of AC, the room was ice cold. Like meat locker cold. Cold enough that my hands were shaking as MacDonald and I pulled out our sidearms to approach the open door on our immediate right-hand side. It became obvious that the TV static was coming from the room as I stepped through the door. We saw in there. Do I need to tell you? You have the CSI reports. Fine. So I went through the open door. So the dorms are a single room with a bed on each side. One of the students was face down on their bed. That poor kid. The only reason he wasn't dead already was that the freezing cold temperatures were stopping the flow of blood from all of the open wounds. There were lacerations all down his back and he was missing a couple of fingers on the only hand visible from my vantage point. I didn't immediately see anyone in the other bed. But as was noted in the CSI reports, they found all of the pieces of that other kid under there. I know you have the CSI reports. I'm not saying this to describe the scene, am I? You want to hear what I saw before MacDonald got in there, right? The static wasn't coming from the TV. It was coming from the. I don't even know how to describe what it was. It was made of TV static. Or what looked like TV static. I could barely look as it fuzzed and buzzed right next to the TV. It could have been anywhere between 6 and 10 feet tall. Yes, I know that doesn't narrow it down at all, but I don't know what to tell you. It was vaguely in the shape of a man and was reaching towards the TV when I tried to focus on it. My head hurt just looking at it. It was impossible to keep track of the shape of it. One moment it looked like a big blob of black and white, and for half a second it would focus into the defined shape of a man. One moment a man. One moment a monster. I didn't know I was firing my gun until I heard the first shot. I shot at center mass like we were taught. It turned around and looked at me. A black and white fuzzy mass of static that I could somehow tell was looking at me. It laughed. A sound I'll never forget. A hive of bees finding my attempts to stop it hilarious. I fired 2 more times at the thing. Just like the first shot, these ones did nothing. It turned around and stepped into the TV. A 9-foot-tall thing made of static stepped into a 22-inch RCA. Whatever geometry made it able to do that, I just don't understand. And I don't think anyone can either. When it stepped into the TV, the lights suddenly turned on inside the room. McDonald stepped into the room, I'm assuming because of the gunshots, and yelled something. I don't really remember what he said, but he put his gun away pretty fast when he saw the kid on the bed barely breathing. It went pretty fast after that. We called the all clear to the EMTs and they rushed up as fast as they could. No, I'm sorry, I didn't see the kid at the end of the hall. You'd have to ask McDonald about that. I called Det. McDonald after I finished reading the statement. He answered on the first ring. You said there were 4 victims. The police reports only mention 3. No voice answered me on the phone immediately. I could hear him breathing softly, so I knew he was still there. Detective McDonald? I asked. Something happened to Riley after that night. I don't know if he really knew what he saw. He tried to understand it, sure, but he never really did. He killed himself when he was on administrative leave about a month after that night. I didn't know how to respond. How do you respond to someone telling you their partner killed themselves? He hung up after he finished his sentence. I didn't know what to do from here. Is there even a story here? Other than the testimony of a cop who killed himself and a detective who would probably deny everything I could say about it, what did I really have? A monster made of TV static killing 3 college students in 1989. So I didn't write the story about the haunted 3rd floor of Manzanita Hall. But someone needed to know. So I'm telling all of you what I found. Maybe you can make sense of it. R/Corder 23. Story 7, There's Something Beyond Vanta Black. I have a friend, Thomas, who works as a freelance artist creating booths and installations for event shows. He's quite talented at designing interactive presentations for companies to showcase their products. The last time we got together, he told me that he had signed on to be part of something big that he wasn't allowed to talk about due to an NDA. Then this past week, he included me as blind carbon copy in the following email. As soon as I finished reading this, I gave Thomas a ring, but the call went straight to voicemail. I drove over to see him, but when I buzzed his apartment, there was no response. His truck is in the parking lot, so at this point I can't tell if he's just not answering anything, or if he's not there. I know I don't have to wait to file a missing person report, but I'm going to give him a day to call me back, and then I'm taking this to the police. 2. Charles Fetterman at ## greater than CC. BCC, William Dalphin at ## greater than from, Thomas Laurent at ## greater than subject, Beyond Vanta Black Project. Mr. Fetterman. My name is Thomas Laurent. I am one of the artists recruited by Mr. Gustav Zorensen for the Beyond Vanta Black, BVB, project for your company. I won't beat around the bush here, sir. I am scared out of my wits. When I was first approached and offered the chance to work with the next step in Vanta Black, it was like winning the lottery. Vanta Black's nearly 100% absorption is a fantastic achievement. I assumed that the only possible next step was perfect 100% light absorption. But when I was shown how BVB not only absorbed all light, but even some of the scattered light of the surrounding area, I was astounded. The way it strips away the defined edges of an object like it's enveloping the thing in a black fog is breathtaking. I'm telling you this because I assume you've never actually seen BVB used before. If you had, you would not have approved the production of it. The color is unnatural, sir, it does not belong in this world. When we look up at the night sky, we think we are seeing the pure absence of light, but we aren't. Light reflected off the atmosphere, light from the earth and moon and other stars, it protects us from the true emptiness of the void. BVB is the void, Mr. Fetterman. It extends beyond the boundaries we give it, and sucks away the light from everything around it. I am writing to you today because something has happened. I, along with two other artists, Genevieve Laver and Piotr Edatu, were asked to come up with 3 unique exhibits with which to show off the glory of Beyond Vanta Black, which we did. My own art installation remains down in your research department, unfinished, where it shall remain as I have no intention of working further on it. Ms. Laver's idea was a room, the inside of which was completely painted with Befarbe, save one wall, which was installed with a full-length mirror from floor to ceiling. I've been inside the room, and it is one of the most disturbing things I've ever seen. Imagine stepping into absolute nothingness. Every step, you're unable to determine if your foot is going to touch solid ground or not. To make matters worse, she had the floor installed at a slant, so as you try to walk toward the center, you're going up an incline but can't see the angle at which it goes. There is a single, white light in the center of the ceiling, for the matter of allowing whoever is inside to at least see themselves, otherwise it would be like not existing at all, just pure blackness. Because of the unique properties of Befarbe though, you cannot actually see the light in the ceiling, even when staring directly at it. Once the door is sealed, the occupant is trapped inside with only their reflection. The effect is unnerving. Yesterday, after Ms. Laver finished her project, she shut herself inside the room, I presume to see how it looked. I was busy in my own area, working on my project. Half an hour later I heard yelling. Hurrying down the hall to her room, I saw a crowd of people surrounding the area, and I was quickly ushered away before I could see what was going on. After things quieted down, I managed to ask one of your engineers what had happened. He told me that someone had gone to check on Ms. Laver and found the poor woman sprawled in the center of her room, bloody and crying. She had clawed out her own eyes, Mr. Fetterman. Somehow, her experience in the room drove her to take her own sight. When I asked Mr. Sorensen about it, he told me that only that Genevieve had had an accident, but that she was taken to the hospital, and she would be okay. As I mentioned, I've been in the room myself, having gone in later that day. Security had cordoned the room off, but nobody was monitoring the area, so it wasn't difficult to get inside. The effect of the room's design, with its Befarbe blackened interior and slanted floor, is almost instantaneous. Within seconds, I felt nauseated, and had to resort to crawling to reach the middle of the room, all the time watching as my hands disappeared into the black fog. As I went, my need for visual stimuli forced me to keep my eyes on the mirror across the room. In it I started to see things that couldn't possibly exist. First the air seemed to fill with swirling tendrils of color, followed by sparks of light like the flash bulb of a camera, floating, and ghostly, disembodied eyes watching me. Worst of all though was my reflection looking back at me. I don't know how, maybe the floor was curved toward the mirrored wall or the lack of defined space messed with my sense of direction. All I know is I found myself crawling toward my reflection, rather than the center of the room. Or worse, my reflection was crawling toward me, staring at me, watching me approach, me watching it approach. I tried to change direction, but I swear to you, it kept crawling toward me no matter how I tried to orient myself. And the more I looked into the eyes of my own reflection, the less human it appeared. Every second, it was like watching my face smear like a painting, my eyes and cheeks and nose and lips turning runny like melted wax. But the one moment I will never forget, the image seared into my brain of the entire experience, was when I stopped in front of the mirror, staring at my reflection, it staring back at me, and then trying to stand up. As I raised my head, I found myself looking over the shoulder of my own reflection and seeing my face again, behind the reflection, also looking over it. In other words, the face I had come to accept as my own was not, there was someone else between me and the mirror, someone who even as the realization came rushing at me, stared up at me with the same horrified expression on its face, its features melting. It was too much. I was ready to follow Genevieve and claw my own eyes out. The only reason I'm here, able to tell you about it now is that I let go. I just let myself fall backward, striking my head on the floor in the process. I blacked out a bit, but I remember rolling down the slanted floor and then hitting the wall. The door must have been swung open from the force, because when I came to I could see out into the hallway, and I dragged myself out. I swear that before I got out and shut the door, I looked back and saw my reflection, only it was standing in the center of the room, watching me leave. That room is cursed. Befauve has turned it into a residence of something sinister and malevolent. But that's not even half of it, Mr. Fetterman. Piotr Edatu's plan was the polar opposite of Ms. Lave's. Rather than a person in a room devoid of light, he had your team help him build a full coverage, cloth bodysuit using the Befauve process. Now, everything upsetting about Lave's room one could explain away as tricks of the mind, ignoring the fact that she is currently missing. What happened to Piotr though, I assure you, cannot be explained. His suit was finished a week before Ms. Lave completed her room. I watched him be helped into the suit for the first time, the team struggling to find where his legs went, then his arms. Once he had all four limbs clothed, they still had to find the zipper and hood to completely seal him in. Upon donning the full bodysuit of Befauve, the effect was truly astounding. Piotr became a foggy, black silhouette. You couldn't tell if you were looking directly at him. He had his workroom installed with almost 24 large flood lamps, drowning out every angle with harsh lighting, and still the suit cast a shadow. Nobody else in the room has a shadow, but Piotr in his suit did. Even more amazing, when he moved, he left a trail of blackness, a sort of after-image of where he had been. I've never seen anything like it. He put the Befauve suit on for short intervals every day, increasing the length he spent inside each time. He told me he enjoyed the way it unnerved the people around him. I asked him what it was like inside and he remarked, "I can see inside you. I can see your bones." I'm not sure if he was joking or serious. Piotr spent every workday setting up and taking photos of himself against various backdrops to see how the Befauve of the suit affected the pictures. There was I saw one of him standing in a glass box filled with water. The water looked like ink. Piotr told me that the way water refracts light, it seemed to magnify the Befauve's absorption effect. After Lave's incident but before I went into her room and experienced the horror of that emptiness firsthand, I rushed to Piotr's dressing room to tell him what had happened. He had been wearing the suit since before I got to work, the longest amount of time he'd ever kept it on. He was sitting at his desk, clad completely in the Befauve bodysuit. I told him of Lave, and he became understandably distraught, asking me to help him out of the suit so we could get to the hospital. At first, I couldn't find the zipper, my hands would disappear in the foggy blackness of the suit's effect. Eventually I found it, and unzipped him. There was nothing inside, Mr. Fetterman. The suit fell away as if draped on a frame of empty air, the hood deflating like a balloon and dropping to the floor along with the rest of the material. Stranger yet, Piotr still seemed to be inside the suit. It was pulled up on the floor in an undefinable pile, like a hole in the floor, but I could hear him from inside it. And wherever he was, he sounded terrified. I could hear him start to scream, echoing from out of the suit's interior like he was falling through a great, endless void, his voice never fading off like it does as someone falls away. He was always right there, screaming, calling my name, begging me to get him out. I gathered up the material and tried shaking it, thinking maybe I could shake him out of the hole, but I had to drop it quickly because the way my hands disappeared inside it, I was afraid I would fall into the suit as well. I immediately hurried to Mr. Sorensen's office across the research area, and told him about Piotr. He seemed more put out than concerned, made a quick phone call, then told me to stay put while he marched off to Piotr's room with a group of men from your security. I sat around in his office for a couple hours before he finally returned with a gentleman named Mr. Klein from your legal department. They assured me that Piotr was all right, that what I had seen was simply the Befauve playing tricks on my eyes. They fed me a bunch of hogwash about how my vision hadn't fully adjusted to the bright lighting of the room, then instructed me to sign a form to waive my rights toward speaking about either of the incidents. It was after that, after they had someone escort me back to my own work area, that I ventured over to Genevieve's room and experienced its horror firsthand. That was yesterday, Mr. Fetterman. I called in sick this morning, with no intention of going in today or any other day out of fear for my own safety. Already my phone has rung at least 20 times this morning, from different unknown callers. Mr. Sorensen tried to reach me half an hour ago and left me a cryptic voicemail saying, "I hope that we don't have to initiate a breach of contract clause. I've looked over my contract with your company Deemtronic, but I still have no idea what he meant by that. It sounds like a threat. There is something evil in Beyond Vantablack, Mr. Fetterman, something Mr. Sorensen does not want people to know about. Ms. Laver is missing. Mr. Edatu is missing. I'm afraid that I may go missing as well. I hope that I'm not making a grave mistake by trusting you with this information. Please contact me via this email address or using the number provided. Sincerely, Thomas Laurent, Artist for Hire. 978, ##. Slaurented ##. Story 8, my old YouTube video is different than I remember. I feel like I'm losing my mind. I've watched the video maybe a dozen times now, and I've seen the same thing every single time. Let me explain a little bit. I'm in my mid-20s now, and back in 2008, I received a camcorder for my birthday. It wasn't very big, maybe the size of half a loaf of bread. Smartphones were just beginning to become a thing, and I had this crummy little flip phone that was hardly capable with taking a photo consisting of more than 10 pixels, much less any watchable video. Anyway, my best friend and I, Emily, fooled around with it, making music videos and just goofing off, as teenagers like to do. We eventually uploaded a few videos onto YouTube. I would link them here, but there's too much identifying information in them. We weren't hoping to be YouTube stars, and trust me, we didn't end up being famous. Our most watched video now has an astonishing 392 views to date. We just thought it would be fun to post our own videos when we saw YouTubers like Smosh and Fred doing the same. Fast forward to 10 years later, I'm sitting at home, missing Emily as I moved halfway across the country a few years ago, so I decided to go to the old channel. I wasn't even sure that it would be up at first, but there it was, a time capsule, the same as we left it. We have a total of 5 videos on the channel. 2 are music videos, really just us lip-syncing and dancing around offbeat, and the others are us messing around and doing random things like playing with my dog. I went through all the videos and found myself laughing at how random and quirky we thought we were and cringing at my awful dancing during Skater Boy. It was all normal and exactly how I remembered it. I mean, it was, until I got to the last video. We were in my basement, and I can't say there was any sort of premise to the video. Some of it consisted of Emily doing cartwheels or myself trying to do cartwheels and running into the wall. The basement of this house was mostly unfinished, so it was really just a cement square with the stairs coming down in the middle, so there were walls blocking your view from one side to the next. We walked around in a circle around the basement as we laughed and goofed off. But as soon as we got to the left side in the video, I froze in my seat watching it. In the background, I saw a dark figure. For a moment, I thought I imagined it, but we walked a little closer in the video, oblivious. "Claire, you cannot do a cartwheel," Emily laughed. I was filming, so her face was on screen. She had heavy bangs and a face that was riddled with that lovely teenage acne. I kept the camera on her face and we kept walking. That's when the figure was in full sight. In the dark, in the shadows, but it was there. It was Emily. I knew it because she was wearing her favorite sweatshirt. She was hanging from a noose, her body limp and lifeless. The me today screamed when I saw it. I haven't seen the video probably since it was posted, but I know I would have seen that. Or Emily would have. I paused the video. It was zeroed in on Emily's live face, but her hanging body was over her shoulder, swaying just slightly, like long grass in the wind. But younger me didn't say anything about the body, she didn't notice it. I continued watching the video, in a trance almost. We walked around the basement, giggling and laughing, and passed by the spot once more. The body was still there. That's when I paused the video and called Emily. She didn't pick up, but she goes to bed pretty early, even on Saturday nights. I called her a few more times, my head heavy with worry, but she was still asleep. I've re-watched the video so many times now, and each time, the body is there in the background and we are completely oblivious to it. I re-watched the rest of the videos and nothing is out the ordinary on any of them. I'm trying to be rational about it. Maybe it was a Halloween prop, or maybe we had it there to scare people watching it. I can't think of another reason, and I'm not going to accept another answer. Not now, or I won't be able to sleep tonight. I will talk to Emily tomorrow when she's awake. Maybe she remembers some stupid prank or prop that I don't. She has to. Story 9, Elba 42. My name's David. I'm a pre-med student with disappointing grades and disappointed parents. I come from a family of doctors, so when I told my parents I wanted to drop out of school to pursue art, I love to draw, they weren't exactly supportive. They basically told me if I drop out I have to move out, so I've been attending classes and just messing around on my laptop while I figure out what I'm going to do next. Friday morning and time for 8 a.m. biochem. I get to class and the professor begins talking, which is my cue to put my earbuds in and fuck off on the internet for 50 minutes. I do my normal Facebook to YouTube routine and I end up watching at least 10 dog videos back to back on YouTube. After I finish watching a video of a dog drinking water upside down, I glance over in the recommended videos and notice a dog live stream. I haven't watched many live streams on YouTube, but the dog looks just like my dog, so I click on it. I can't believe how much the dog resembles my dog, and then I notice the room looks just like my parents' kitchen. I glance over at the fridge and see vacation pictures from my parents' trip to Hawaii last summer. Holy fuck, this is my house. I'm an only child and my parents barely know how to check their emails, so how and why are they live streaming? The stream has one viewer, and the channel name is Elba 42. My state of confusion turns to immense concern when I see a shadowy figure move across the camera. It looks like someone dressed in really baggy all-black clothes. I couldn't make out a face. My dog surprisingly seems content and is just lying on the kitchen floor sleeping. By now the lecture has ended and I've been too fixated potentially watching a live stream of my house being robbed to notice the professor has stopped talking and the lecture theater is completely empty. I pull out my phone and call home praying that my parents became tech savvy overnight. When did you figure out how to live stream? I ask my mom what's a live stream? My mom says, I can hear my mom's work pager going off and she tells me she has to go and abruptly hangs up. I try to call back since I'm now afraid there are people in the house with my mom and she doesn't know it, but there is no answer. I bolted home as fast as I can and notice my mom's car is gone. I suddenly realize how stupid it was of me to not call 911, but my emotional state has been less than ideal. I stand on my front lawn for about 10 seconds contemplating what I should do. It's daytime on a Monday, but everyone is at work or school, so my neighborhood is empty. I go around the back of my house and look through the windows, but I don't see any movement. Eventually the adrenaline gets the better of me and I unlock the back door and go inside. I keep yelling hello, not knowing what to expect as I walk through the house. After a thorough search of the house, I can't find anything unusual or missing and more importantly anyone unusual. I pay special attention to my kitchen and try to match the angle from the live stream to find a camera, but there's nothing. I've been suffering from pretty bad insomnia the last week or so, likely due to all the stress of school and my family, so I spend some time and level myself into thinking I was just seeing things. I'm still not convinced, so I spend the rest of the day trying to find Elba 42 so I can find out more, but I get zero search results. I alternate this research with frequent checks of my house looking for signs of burglary, but come up short. I spend the next day sitting in my room on my laptop trying to recreate the series of videos I watched that lead me to that live stream. At this point I've searched Elba 42 in every search engine in existence and can't find anything. A couple days pass and I become pretty much convinced the whole livestream incident was insomnia-induced delirium. I've finally figured out what my next steps are. I'm going to drop out at the end of the semester and find a job. Hopefully by the time the next semester starts I'll have enough saved up and can move out on my own once my parents find out I'm done with school and kick me out when I'm finally out on my own and can make ends meet. I can devote the rest of my time to working on my drawings and see if anything takes off. I haven't told anyone about that weird livestream incident, mainly because I don't think they'd believe me, nor do I really even believe myself at this point. Friday rolls around again and I am sitting in class once again doing absolutely nothing productive and watching YouTube videos waiting to be done and go home. Suddenly I get a private message on Facebook. It's my friend Sam. He asks if I want to hang out tonight and have some drinks, which is something I more than welcome. I tell him we can hang out at my house since my parents will be gone all weekend to a medical conference. I rush home after classes and nap for what seems like hours, but in reality it was probably 30 minutes. I still can't get a proper sleep at night, but hopefully after a night of unwinding and having some drinks I'll be able to relieve some stress and fix that. I wake up and head to the kitchen to make myself some dinner before Sam comes over. My mom has left a note reminding me to feed the dog and put out the garbage. They must have left while I was napping and didn't say anything, but with all the tension between us lately because of my studies, it's fine by me. Around 10 p.m. I get a text from Sam saying he's on his way. Sam and I have a great night relaxing and just talking. I've never been much of a partier, so a quiet Friday night hanging with a friend is an ideal time for me. I always feel comfortable talking to Sam and opening up about stress. Sam and I have known each other since grade 9 and he's always been a great source of advice. He tells me that I shouldn't try to appease my parents and that I have to do what's best for me regarding major life decisions. It's really nice to hear someone echo the ideas that have been passing through my mind recently. Sam brought over a 40 of whiskey and I end up drinking way too much. I normally don't mix beer and hard liquor, but I was having such a good time I lost myself in the moment and between the two of us we killed a 12-pack of beer and 40 of whiskey. I wake up Saturday morning on my couch. I must have passed out and from as far as I can tell Sam has already left. I feel like I've been hit by a freight train. I stumble into the kitchen to get some water but am interrupted by a loud knocking at the front door. I figure Sam probably forgot his phone or something and go to answer. It's a police officer. He confirms my identity and asks if Sharon and Joe Sanders are my parents. They are. I am hungover as hell and very confused so I mutter a yes. He tells me they were in a serious car accident and that I need to come with him immediately. It's been 10 years since the death of my parents. After a short bout of drugs and reckless behavior immediately following their deaths, I managed to pull myself together. I'm a doctor now. After the death of my parents something clicked inside me and I began working harder than I have ever worked in my life. I had to spend an additional year at college for pre-med because of my year of slacking, but I finally did it. I never had the best relationship with my parents, but I hope they would be proud of me. I think about them nearly every day. Friday comes to a close. It's been a very busy day for me, but I have a bit more work to do before I leave for the day. I work as a GP at one of my dad's old colleagues' clinics. He was very sympathetic after my parents' passing and took me under his wing once I told him I wanted to be a doctor. I don't think I would have gotten through medical school without him. Unfortunately he passed about a year ago to cancer, which was another hard death for me. I've been dating the most beautiful, intelligent girl I have ever met for the last 2 years. Her name is Julia. We met in med school and really hit it off. We haven't moved in together yet, but things are getting pretty serious. I want to spend the rest of my life with this girl. She recently moved out of state for work and I plan on joining her soon. I've put in my notice at work and everyone has been very supportive of my decision, so it's just a waiting game at this point. I decide I've earned a break before I finish up this paperwork in front of me. I love working at this clinic but we are severely understaffed so the doctors end up having to do most of the administrative work in addition to meeting with patients. It's not a huge deal, but my mind goes numb after a few hours of filling out forms. My work ethic has improved greatly since my freshman year, but I haven't lost my affinity for messing around on the internet. I check my Skype and see that Julia has linked me some cute animal videos. This girl knows me too well. God, I love her. She's currently offline, so I can't message her back, but I eagerly open the first video. After I finish watching the cutest video of a puppy learning to walk downstairs, I look over in the recommended videos. Elba42 is live streaming. I haven't thought about this person or that incident in over 10 years. The world around me falls away and I know that I have to watch. I click on the live stream. What I see takes me to a level of scared I have never experienced in my life. The live stream is of the kitchen at my old house. The house was sold after my parents' death and the land became commercial, so the house was torn down. This is not possible. My dog that I personally took to the vet and had put down 3 years ago due to old age is once again sleeping peacefully on the kitchen floor. I have to be hallucinating. I know I sleep better these days, but I have to be tired. This can't be happening. What I see next makes me want to faint. I don't know how I haven't passed out at this point. Sitting at the kitchen table are my parents. My dad is reading the paper like he always used to do every morning and my mom is on her iPad. The setting is exactly how it used to be. Then I see it. The dark figure in baggy clothes comes into view. I was wrong the first time I seen it. This can't be a person. It looks like an amorphous shadow. No face, no distinct shape. Whatever I am looking at moves directly in front of the camera. I am trying my best to study it, but I can't. It's too vague, even when directly in focus. I hear someone coming down the stairs and into the kitchen. A young girl walks past the camera, past the shadowy figure and sits down at the kitchen table with my parents. I can't make them out. Then the girl turns around. It's Julia. She begins talking with my parents like she's known them for years. This is not possible. I sit and watch for a few minutes, but it feels like hours. They are all joking and laughing and having a great time. Then the shadowy figure moves closer to the camera and the screen goes completely black. The live stream ends. In a frenzied panic I pull out my phone and call Julia. There is no answer. Story 10, in every way but physical. I'm a wolf. You can go ahead and laugh if you want, because I know humans like you will never understand the pain and suffering I've had to go through just to be myself. To you, it's probably hilarious. To me, it's a way of life. I've felt it in my bones ever since I was a kid, reading books like White Fang and seeing movies like Balto, and it was just, I don't know, an almost spiritual experience. It just resonated with me, you know, like the concept of religion does with Bible thumpers, only more real and visceral and intense. I would pretend to be a wolf during games of pretend. I would dream of being a wolf whenever I fell asleep. I had wolf toys. I drew wolves all over my school notebooks. Wolf, 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 wolf. Everything was wolves, and I never grew out of it. I wound up falling into some weird stuff, mostly with furries. It seemed like a logical step in the right direction, I guess, although I never really got into the sort of stuff they did. It wasn't about sex or cartoons for me, more than this ache in my soul that told me that I wasn't human, I was just wearing human skin. I was a wolf trapped in the weak shell of a hairless teenage ape, struggling to escape. I guess that furries kind of helped, though. The fandom was home to all kinds, and that's how I found out about otherkin. If you don't know what an otherkin is, they're poor souls like me who are snared in the wrappings of humanity, yearning to breathe the open air of our natural homes, live our natural lifestyles, and be true to their original soul. It was, kind of neat I guess to see that I wasn't alone and just how many people were moved by the same things that moved me. Also startling was how many wolves there were, which bothered me. I know, it seems weird that I would be bothered by that, but it just seemed like so many people just arbitrarily decided that they were wolves, too. I know in my heart what I am. I felt the call of the wild too many times to ignore such a feeling, but there was something suspicious in the chorus of guys with yiffy, hot to trot, buff, porno-worthy personas who were flitting about chanting that they were actually wolves when, honestly, wolves are too majestic and regal to act like a bunch of cum sluts. It seemed more like wolves were just popular and people were trying to climb some weird hierarchy of being the most pure furry or whatever. In a way, it was like blasphemy. So, when I moved out on my own at 19, I decided to break ties with most of the fandom and the other kin, see what I did there. And live on my own terms. Carve my own path. Spirituality is supposed to be a personal journey, anyway, so I detached myself from everything and became as close to a wolf as I could manage. Sort of. I'm a soft wolf. I like human comforts, so I stayed in my apartment and I still use the internet. But I began to research wolves more seriously and decided that I could change myself to act like one. No more being a meek nobody like I was in high school. I was a majestic, proud, powerful force of nature. I decided I would be the alpha of my life, and decided to test it out by starting on the apartment building I lived in. Small stuff, really, like being more assertive about my neighbors being quiet and taking my complaints to the office instead of dealing with a busted dishwasher or a flickering light in the hall. The whole point was to prove that I was the caretaker of the building, that I had the confidence of a leader, and I was fit to be the alpha of our pack. It was nice, I guess. I felt better about myself, and when mixed in with stuff like sleeping on the floor with the window open, as close as I get to sleeping outside, and nearly becoming a hyper-carnivore, which is harder than it looks, I honestly felt more and more like who I should be. Human skin be damned, I was a wolf. A wolf with a job at a Circle K and opposable thumbs, but a real-life wolf. And everything was fine until David moved in. David was. I honestly don't know the words to describe David. He moved in next door and was pretty clearly one of those frat bro douche types who probably went to the nearby university and thought going to keg parties meant he had a bigger dick than everyone else. Whatever. Being a wolf, I figured I was above picking a fight with him because he was too dumb to ever muscle me out of my spotlight. Except, he seemed to have an alpha mindset of his own. I ask him to keep it down. He laughs at me. He purposefully began bringing his girlfriend home to have loud, noisy, vicious sex to keep me awake at night. He stole a package from Amazon off of my doorstep, I'm sure of it, and to beat it all, he was just so overbearing and exhausting that the office wouldn't even pay attention to me when I complained about it. They actually look like they dread seeing me anymore, so they just stopped paying any attention to me at all. I couldn't believe it. But the bastard had actually made me lose my status. I was the beta wolf. I won't even lie. I felt like my life was destroyed. I felt like everything I'd worked so hard for had been ripped right out of my hands, and that my ancestors were looking at me with shame. I was a wolf who'd been replaced by somebody who wouldn't have been able to tell his tale from his ears and, well, it was kind of like losing a part of myself. Like there was no validation to what I was, and I had failed at being who I knew myself to be. The idea of moving crossed my mind more than a couple of times, but my bank account wasn't really feeling it. At the time, it seemed like I'd be stuck living under David's thumb until my savings improved and my lease expired. My brain just couldn't wrap itself around that and my thoughts kept drifting to things like suicide. Because I honestly couldn't deal with losing my status or disappointing the wolves that came before me. I could feel their spirits burrowing in my head, telling me that I should be alpha, but I couldn't really believe that I had the power to usurp this stupid human that had stolen my territory and my pack. If not for the ghost mother, I probably would have never found my strength. I was laying on the floor, windows open, staring at the ceiling when I noticed that the pattern up there was beginning to shift and change. It was normally just the boring old circles of uneven paint, but the ridges and points fused into the details of the fur of a gorgeous white wolf. I watched, amazed, as the shadows became her soulful eyes and her ears twitched and her mouth opened and the most beautiful, calming voice spilled out of her mouth, telling me that she was watching me from the astral plane and she had enough faith for the both of us. She told me of David, and how he wasn't one of us, a fact I already knew. He was human and I was not. What she did drill home was that humans are weak when they are removed from their tools, and they lack the survival instincts that keeps our kind keen and alive. My attempts to outwit him had failed because my pack were a bunch of misguided, hairless apes, and David was too dense to be tricked. You need an opponent with wit before you can outwit them. No, intelligence and dignity were not games he played, so I would have to channel something more fierce and primal. Instincts, the ghost mother said, that I have and humans do not. I understood completely. With her blessing and guidance, I would retake my position as alpha, and if I failed? Well, suicide was always an option. Death is better than a cage, right? Learning David's routine was simple enough. He worked part-time at a Subway and would, predictably, come home early pretty often. Judging from the sound of him blasting his stupid video games on the other side of the wall, he was usually back by 1 in the afternoon. His girlfriend, Miranda? Who cares? Would get off of work at 5 and come visit pretty much immediately, leading to fucking that nearly tore my wall down. She'd usually take off between 2 and 2:15 in the morning, high as a kite and unfit to drive. Guess who ended up driving anyway? The thing is, with them being inebriated, it was pretty easy for them to forget to lock the door. Sometimes, what's-her-face wouldn't even close it all the way, which I discovered after my first few times stalking David. 2 out of 3 times, I didn't even have to twist the handle to get the door open. I just pushed, walked inside, and always found him snoring away in his bedroom at the back of the hell. Too baked to stay awake, I guess. You may think it's undignified to kill prey in its sleep, but wolves, especially wolves without packs, have to be very opportunistic to stand a chance. The wild is unforgiving and elk are a lot bigger and stronger. They're stupid, though, and easily startled. All they can do is run and run, until they're too weak to run anymore. David isn't a problem now. I'm making burgers for dinner to celebrate. I usually eat my meat raw, but special occasions call for a little pampering, don't you think? I don't believe any wolf worth their salt would turn away a good dinner just because it's a little toasty and slathered in mustard. That said, I really wish Ghost Mother would come celebrate with me. I want to tell her how thankful I am, and how much I've accomplished. I want to tell her that I'm alpha again. And, if nothing else, I'd like to know what to do with the rest of David. She always knows what to do. Story 11, Mason. It's just the wind moving the door, said Alex, as I woke up with a start to the sound of a loud bang. I looked out the window just beside my bed on the top bunk of room number 307A. The weather was eerily calm, as if masquerading a sinister secret. The leaves were still. No sign of wind that could move a door. It was 3:30 a.m. and sleep was hard to come as I had been rendered sleepless yet again. Surprisingly at the same time of the night as yesterday. Alex was snoring away on the bottom bunk. I decided to take a walk in the hostel corridor and take my mind off of the anxiety I was experiencing due to sleeplessness. As I exited the room, the cool winter breeze sent a chill up my spine. I started walking around the corridor and reached the 3rd floor balcony. I was so in my head that I almost missed the fact that someone else was standing on the balcony already. Shit. I let out impulsively, when I came face to face with the pale blue-eyed boy. I didn't see you there, I said, breathing heavily. It's okay. Nobody expects company at this hour of the night, said the boy. A scary sense of calm on his face. Although, it may have seemed so to me as it contradicted my anxious haze. I'm Mason. He said. Hi. I'm Sam, I replied, now embarrassed of my earlier reaction. Do you often wake up this early? I asked. Sometimes I come here to get some fresh air and solitude. Mason replied, completely ignoring my question. Oh, that's good. So what room are you in? I asked. 407A, he replied. Just above me. I thought. So Mason, I'll leave you be. I said and began to leave, when he replied, look at the sky. So dark. As if the sun is cloaked in the thickness of the night. Very true, I replied, slightly creeped out. Now look, I need to get some sleep now, have a long day tomorrow. I said, trying to get out of the balcony. Will you come again tomorrow? Mason asked. Wide blue unblinking eyes. I couldn't help but say sure. I'll see you around, I said, momentarily wondering why I said so. I walked back to my room when I suddenly realized I had left my cell phone in the balcony. I rushed back to get it. Mason was nowhere to be seen. Strange, I thought he must have left too, I thought, grabbed my phone and went to sleep for a bit so that I could attend my classes without a splitting headache in the morning. The next day was pretty uneventful. Classes, coffee. More classes. More coffee. At lunch, I called up Alex, so we could have lunch together. Come near the hostel, I'm waiting near the cafeteria, said Alex. I walked near the hostel gates, and I swear, I saw Mason at the balcony. I blinked and there was no one. I thought it was the caffeine combined with sleeplessness. What you looking at? Asked Alex. Oh, it's nothing, I said. We had lunch, and the rest of the day was shrouded in monotony of routine. As night dawned, my sleeplessness took a toll on me and I found myself awake again. 3:30 a.m. Right on schedule, I thought to myself. I was drawn to the balcony, as if I wanted to go meet Mason again. Something about the boy, some mystery which needed solving. And as I neared the balcony, I'm here, said Mason, right beside me. Literally scaring the soul out of me. Oh hello, I said. Come, let's enjoy the silence of the night, said Mason. As we entered the balcony, he suddenly grabbed my hand and jumped off the balcony. I woke up with a start. Are you all right? Asked Alex. We've been searching for you for ages. Where am I? I asked, whimpering. I was just having a nightmare, I said, less with words and more with air. Yeah. But how on earth did you get into 407E? It's been locked out, ever since its last occupant jumped off the balcony. What was his name? Was all I could ask. Mason